Hello and welcome to the video about why we randomize when we're picking a sample. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with our goal. And our main goal is to, when we sample, this is our main goal when we sample, okay, is for the sample to be a good representation of the population. Now, if it isn't, that creates bias, okay, where we overestimate certain characteristics of the population or underestimate certain characteristics of the population. And I'm going to talk about an example that I actually didn't make up, but somebody thought up of, and it's actually in your book, and it's about soup. And it's a very easy, great demonstration of why we should randomize, or how it would be randomized. So you got this big tub of soup, and you're having a big party coming over that night, and you've made this soup. Okay, so here's your soup. Okay, so before the party, you wanna taste some of it. You want to taste some of it, okay? Which would be a sample. You're going to take a sample because you want to make sure what they're tasting, okay, is good. So you should be able to reach anywhere into this. You should be able to reach anywhere into this soup and take a spoonful and taste it, and that should be a good representation of the whole tub. Okay, so let's say you sprinkle some salt. You sprinkle some salt on the top. Okay, you sprinkle some salt on the top. Okay, so now here's your soup, and here's the salt on the top. So you take your ladle or your spoon, and you reach in and grab down here. Okay, so here, this is the section that you grabbed. Now when you take this out, you have to ask yourself, is this a good representation? Is this little spot right here a good representation of the whole? Okay, and you would say no, because you have all this salt. Because what happens if I just took a little snippet right here? What happens if I come take this part up here? Okay, now this is my sample. Now what's the difference between these two samples? Okay, I'll call this sample 1, and I'll call this sample 2. Okay, so sample 1 or sample 2 is more salty. Sample 1 is less. There's no salt. Okay, because all that salt's on top. Okay, now what we could do is to randomize this pot to make sure this salt gets spread out evenly through the whole thing, because I want this pot to be a good representation of my sample. And right now, if you look at these samples, this would be my sample 1, and this would be my sample 2. Okay, they're not a good representation. So if I reach in here and stir this pot, and I stir this pot, okay, what's going to happen here, which is just obvious, is now that salt is going to be evenly distributed throughout the entire pot. Okay, so now no matter where I go and take my sample, whether it's here, whether it's here, whether it's here, okay, I'll call this sample 1, sample 2, and sample 3. Now I have 3 samples, 1, 2, and 3. So remember, the whole pot is the population. The whole pot is the population. And you have to ask yourself, does this sample look like the population? Yes, because it has salt in it. Does this one and this one a good representation of the whole thing? Yes, yes, because each sample here, okay, each sample had salt in it. So each one of these samples looks like the whole population. Whereas this one, this was my population. I reach in, and this one underestimated This one underestimated how much salt, so that's not a good representation of the whole. And 2 was an overestimation, of the salt. So no, that's not a good representation either. Okay, so that's one of the main reasons. Remember, whenever we have a population, if this is our population, okay, and you reach in here and you take a sample, which is a subset, this thing, if this looked like this, okay, your sample should also look like this, or your sample should look like your population. Okay, that's a very, very important aspect. And how do we do that? We randomize, which makes it fair. Okay, and we randomize, and there's going to be sampling methods that we use to do that. Okay, which is going to be the start of the next video. All of our good, okay, and bad sample methods. There are bad sample methods that this actually doesn't happen. But whenever you sample, that should be the good thing. This is how you word it. The sample is a good representation of the population, or the sample is a good representation of the population. Okay, if you're ever asked about what makes up a good sample, well, a good sample is a sample that represents the population. Okay? Alright, well, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching.